We all want to make a difference. We want to do some good in the world. But what if just having good intentions isn't actually enough? Today, we're going to dive into the core ideas from William MacAskill's book, Doing Good Better, and really explore how we can turn that impulse to help into massive, real-world impact. So, let's get right into it.
Okay, first up, I've got a question for you. Just think about it for a second. When you picture your income compared to every single person on the planet, where do you think you land? Are you in the bottom half? Maybe the top quarter? Go ahead, just take a quick guess.
All right, you got a number in your head? So let's start with an income that, in a country like the US, most of us would see as being pretty low, about $11,000 a year. I mean, that's right around the poverty line for a single person. Living on that would be a real struggle, no question.
But here's the part that's kind of hard to wrap your head around. On a global scale, that $11,000 a year income makes you richer than 85% of the entire world's population. And just to be clear, that number is already adjusted for what's called purchasing power. So it accounts for the fact that things are cheaper in other countries. It's a true apples-to-apples comparison.
Okay, so let's try another number. Let's bump it up. How about $52,000? This is, a pretty typical income for someone working in a developed country. It's comfortable for sure, but it's probably not what you'd picture when you think of the super rich, right?
And yet, with that income, speaking globally, you are the 1%. That's right. You see, the thing is, we're always comparing ourselves to our neighbors, to the people around us, so we completely miss the bigger picture. By global standards, many of us are the financial elite. And look, this isn't about making you feel guilty, it's about opportunity. It means we have an absolutely incredible power to do good. But having that power and using it well, those are two very, very different things.
And that leads us right into the first major hurdle, what the book calls the feel-good trap. This is our natural instinct to help in ways that are really emotionally satisfying. They feel right, but they aren't necessarily the most effective.
A perfect example of this is the play pump. I mean, on paper, this idea was pure genius. It was a true rock star of the charity world. The concept was simple. Kids play on a merry-go-round, and all that fun and energy pumps clean water for their entire village. The media just ate it up. Big names like Bill Clinton and Jay-Z got behind it, and tens of millions of dollars came pouring in. It felt fun, it felt innovative, it felt perfect.
But then, people started looking closer, and the whole story began to fall apart. First off, the cost. Each one of these play pumps cost $14,000. That's 4 times more expensive than a simple, boring, but totally functional hand pump that does the exact same job.
But here's the real kicker. This is where this brilliant idea just completely collapses. The design was just fundamentally flawed. See, to get enough water for the village for one day, the pump would have to be spinning for an estimated 27 hours. That's impossible. This wasn't a fun toy, it was a grueling, relentless chore. As one woman in Mozambique told investigators, the old hand pump was much easier. A project that was born from the best intentions had actually become a burden. So, what's the takeaway here? Is it that we should stop giving? No, not at all. The lesson is that we need to start thinking differently. We have to shift our focus away from what feels good and towards what actually does good. Or, even better, what does the most good possible? So let's contrast the super sexy play pump with something incredibly boring, deworming. It's exactly what it sounds like. You just give kids a cheap pill to treat intestinal worms. There's no cool gadget, there are no fun photo ops. But researchers like Michael Kramer used rigorous, randomized controlled trials to study it, and the results were just staggering. School absenteeism dropped by 25%. For less than 50 cents per child per year, this simple pill dramatically improved health, education, and even their future income.
This brings us to a really critical concept, what the book calls the 100x multiplier. The idea is this: when you're trying to do good, the best options aren't just a little bit better than the average ones. They can be 10 times, 100 times, or even 1,000 times more effective. Where you choose to direct your dollar can have a massively different impact.
Okay, this phenomenon is explained by something called a fat-tailed distribution. But forget the nerdy jargon for a second. Just think about it like movie profits. Most movies, they either break even or they lose money. But a tiny, tiny handful, the blockbusters, they make almost all the profit for the entire industry. Well, doing good works the same way. A few blockbuster interventions produce this enormous share of all the positive results. So our goal shouldn't be to just find a good cause. It should be to find the blockbuster.
And this way of thinking doesn't just apply to where you donate your money. It also applies to one of the biggest resources any of us have, the roughly 80,000 hours we'll spend working over our lifetimes. How can we use that incredible amount of time to make the biggest possible difference?
We've all heard this advice, right? Follow your passion. It's on posters, it's in graduation speeches, it's just everywhere. It's the cornerstone of most career advice, and it feels so intuitive. It feels so right.
But what if it's actually bad advice? There's a lot of research showing that job satisfaction doesn't really come from matching a job to some passion you already have. Instead, satisfaction actually grows out of the work itself. It comes from things like having autonomy, getting really good at what you do, and feeling like you're part of something meaningful. In other words, passion doesn't lead you to the right job. Often, the right job leads you to passion.
This kind of thinking can totally flip our assumptions about careers on their head. So, take the true story of a doctor named Greg. His goal was simple. He wanted to save the most lives possible. Now, the obvious path was to go work as a doctor in a poor country. Over his whole career, it was estimated he'd save about 140 lives. But he chose a really counterintuitive path. He decided to become a specialist in the UK and earn to give. And the result? By donating a big chunk of his much higher salary, he could fund interventions that saved dozens of lives every single year. He could multiply his impact far beyond what his own two hands could ever do.
And this leads to a pretty profound takeaway. For a lot of us, our greatest impact might not come directly from our own labor, but from how we choose to direct our resources. It totally reframes the purpose of a career. It's not just about what job do I have, but what does my work make possible in the world? Okay, so we've seen that we have this enormous power, that our gut feelings can sometimes lead us astray, and that using data and reason can unlock just a huge amount of impact. This whole way of thinking is the basis for a philosophy and a social movement called effective altruism. So, how do we actually do it? How do we put this into practice? At its heart, this whole approach is really a mental toolkit. It's built around 5 key questions you can ask yourself before you decide to help. First, how many people will this help and by how much? Second, is this the absolute most effective thing I could be doing with my time or money? 3, is this area neglected? Is there a gap that others aren't filling? 4, what would happen anyway, even if I didn't do this? And finally, what are the real chances of success, and how amazing would it be if it worked? Just asking these questions can be the compass that guides you away from the merely good and towards that fat tail of extraordinary impact. Ultimately, what this whole framework gives us isn't just a new set of rules to follow. It's a new perspective. It shows us that by combining our hearts with our heads, we each have the power not just to do a little bit of good, but to do an extraordinary amount of good in the world. So the only question left is, how will you choose to use it?